Well, the elections are on shortly. You're not up for re-election. In the new House there could be several lawyers.
Yes, there are a number of candidates, and there were two proposed last night, Sir Philip and also, I can't think of the lady's name, Lady Advocate. And there's a lawyer standing.
Mr. Renouf, I think.
Renouf, yes, is going to target St. Juan's. I met for the first time last night the advocate, part of the family that run the potteries. James,
oh, right. Oh, yeah.
James,
yeah.
who I've not met before.
Right.
There's Mr. Marquand. He's not
English solicitor.
He's an English solicitor. Can't think of any others.
So you've been the lone voice on legal matters and very keen to display your legal knowledge. If the bailiff is elected as possible, will you feel intimidated by having somebody like him standing alongside you?
The poor bailiff? No, because he will have to accept the discipline, which I have to accept as well, that I'm not actually there to advise the Assembly on legal matters. Now, sometimes I will express a view on legal matters, but people are very free to ask the Attorney General to express his own view. I mean, obviously, I've had to accept that discipline, and the understanding I've had with Attorney Generals and Solicitor Generals is that I would only express a contrary view when I really thought they'd got it wrong. You
discussed that. You discussed that very frankly.
I did, yes,
yeah.
yes. Because it would be wrong for me. I'm not there to advise the Assembly. And if I thought they'd got it wrong, I'd probably try and do it in a delicate way by saying, well, have you considered this? And recently a situation like that occurred in the Assembly, where I was actually trying to point one of them to a particular thing, and they misunderstood me.
You don't have a background in finance law. You've always been in public service, as far as most of your work.
Well, I had a number of years in private service, but you're right. My background is not in the commercial.
And obviously the island is very much committed to the finance industry. Do you think you've got enough enthusiasm for the finance industry in your aspiration to be Chief Minister?
Well, I think that I recognise, and in fact if you saw my press release, I recognised in the importance of the finance industry. One of the surprising things I discovered soon after I became a member was that at that time the finance industry was responsible for, I think it's 48% of gross value added, whereas tourism and hospitality was responsible for 3%, and agriculture and fisheries 1.5%. Now, that doesn't mean I undervalue the importance of tourism or undervalue the importance of agriculture and fisheries, but it does mean that our island economy, for better or for worse, is really dependent upon the finance industry.
It has become that way, but it's not just about the money, is it? You are a man of faith, as the public well knows.
Yes.
There are morality issues about some of the activities in the finance industry. Do you have any trouble with any of those?
Well, I think that there are some misconceptions in relation to generally what's happening there. I mean, I understand those who would take a simplistic view and basically would say, well, we are assisting people to pay less tax than they ought to pay somewhere. I understand that concern. But the reality of the situation is that there is no reason why people cannot seek to lawfully arrange their tax affairs in a way that's most beneficial to them.
But I mean, that's the polite end of the market. There is a rather rougher end of the market where people are plundering the resources of their countries and running off with them.
Well, yes, but that's crime, and that's why we have enforcement procedures. I mean, if people are doing that, we don't want that sort of business. Jersey has very much cleaned up its act in the last 20 years. I mean, the standards now which are being applied are there to ensure we don't get the proceeds of crime, we don't get money.
Yeah, but that's always said, isn't it? It's always, whenever you stick a pin in the system, it always says, well, that's how things might have been in the past, but they're better now. But the cases, they don't originate in Jersey, do they? They always originate somewhere else. Some other court discovers what's going on, and they finish up here because the company is registered here or the trust is registered here, or they don't originate here, do they?
I mean, we don't want this kind of business. We have set up standards to ensure we don't have this kind of business. But life being what it is, inevitably there will be situations in which people will somehow circumvent the safeguards and the controls. I mean, the Michelle case I referred to before, was it Sonny Abacha, the Nigerian former leader? It was his money, which I think somehow ended up here. Now, there were failures on the part of individuals who've been prosecuted in relation to that. I'm not sure I've got the right case.
No, he wasn't. Those two were related cases, but there's another case now in the offing because it's arisen somewhere else. A Kenyan case, I think. Millions. It's always millions. In fact, it's usually millions these days. The money disappears from one country, and it doesn't seem to have much difficulty in finding its way to places like Jersey, the Caymans, and all these places.
All you can do is set up systems. I mean, which we have done to try to ensure that we don't get this kind of money. We actually don't want it. We don't want it for reputational reasons and so on. And there's a misconception, I think, amongst the public generally, as to the nature of the business that's being done. Now, clearly, when you've got banking business, the sources of that money could come from different places. But when you're looking at other areas of business where people are setting up corporate entities, companies, or whatever, to act as the holding companies in relation to business, what they're trying to achieve is not a situation in which they're not paying tax anywhere. What they're trying to achieve is a situation in which they're only paying tax in one place. That's so-called fiscal neutrality. And that is what Jersey's business is very much involved in, creating a place where the holding company can be, or the central entity, so that people who may come from different places with different tax regimes only pay tax in one place. That's a perfectly legitimate aim. There's nothing wrong with that, provided they are paying tax in one
I'll
place.
just raise one. I don't want to dwell on this issue too long, but the Panorama programme that came here had no difficulty going into a bank with a camera cache. They weren't exposing it like this little camera. They went in with a camera cache in Jersey and Guernsey and found banks, quite senior bank employees, quite happy to talk about schemes which were not legal schemes in order to.
That's quite unacceptable.
But that was no great difficulty. They walked in and found it. It suggests that the regulators here possibly could do much the same, not with a camera cache, but they could discover these things much the same. And one of the interesting things is, as far as I'm aware, there's been no repercussions. There's been no announcement, no investigation, no. You know, it's a case of let's not make a fuss, let's not investigate this further.
Well, if you're asking me my opinion, I'm in favour of enforcing high standards of regulation. I mean, in fact, that's consistent with my approach generally. I mean, I said things like police officers must work within the law. I mean, I think that if you establish rules, you establish principles, and you should enforce them. You
are a declared candidate for a chief minister. I think you're not the only one. I think one other minister has declared.
I'm the only declared candidate. Yes.
I thought Paul
said he
was interested in
count himself out.
Senator Rosa has always been assumed to be a candidate. He hasn't declared. Could he work with you in the Council of Ministers? Could you work with him?
We've hitherto worked together successfully in the Council of Ministers. Obviously, the current situation in relation to Lime Grove and our differences of opinion in relation to that has tested our relationship. But I'm a person who will always seek to work constructively together with people. You're always going to have your differences of opinion, your times when you're cross with each other even, but you have to get on and do a job.
If the ex-bailiff came in and became Chief Minister, which is always a possibility, he's an experienced guy, he's used to dealing with things, good legal brain like yours, would that create problems? Would that be... I mean, you'd be quite happy.
I don't think he aspires to that. I mean, obviously, if he dies, then I think he should declare that to the electorate. But I'm not aware that he aspires to that. Having said that, there is a difficulty in the present system whereby you have people who've got 6-year term, like myself, like Mr. Oscar and possibly others, who aren't up for election this time. Now the problem was that if we had come to the conclusion that we should stand again and offer results, then we actually would have had, as I understand it, to have stood down before the end of the summer recess. And that was quite impossible for Mr. Osif, because he's the Treasury Minister. He has to do all the work on presenting the financial staff, the tax staff, and so on and so forth. It was completely impossible. If I had been doing that, then I wouldn't have been able to present the things which I was presenting right at the end of that period. I wouldn't be able to be representing my own department into the financial staff and so on. I wouldn't be able to be completing the work I'm going to hopefully complete on the police authority law. So as I lodged it before, I would have suddenly had to stop. And the difficulty was we would have had to resign as members of the States as well as ministers, because there was no provision for that. Having said that, I mean, there is a difficulty, even if we arrive at a position in 3 years' time where all the candidates for Chief Minister are candidates for Senator. You would have to be a Senator to be Chief Minister, but I think the public would find it surprising if a Chief Minister was not a Senator. The fact is that you're going to go into an election situation then, and you may have 3 or 4 people who might say, well, I may be a candidate for Chief Minister if I have enough support. But the election isn't one for Chief Minister. The election, even then, will be one for Senator. And I could envisage a curious situation in which you'd have 4 potential candidates for Chief Minister, all going as Senator, all having 25% of the public who thought they should be the Chief Minister, and all those who thought someone else should be not voting for them. They all finished with 25% and they're all eliminated.